Hi, this is Sam Stone here at South by Southwest 2024, talking with Dan Winters, the latest subject of the Nat Geo series Photographer, with his episode premiering on Nat Geo on March 18th and available to stream on Disney Plus and Hulu on March 19th. Dan, thanks for taking the time to sit down and speak with me.
Good morning. Made me get up early.
Yeah, me too. After taking so many photos and, documenting so many historical events, how was it like getting the request to be the subject of a documentary episode?
I think more than anything, I like the idea that it's a legacy project. It's a time and place, but it's also sort of like a benchmark for me within my career. I'm kind of 61 years old, so kind of winding down to a degree. I like the idea that there's this sort of document set in stone.
One of the things that I've always enjoyed about your work is that there is that sense of wonder, and now I'm somebody that also grew up watching Star Trek, Star Wars. I went to space camp.
Very cool.
What is it about that kind of like machinery and the tools we use to kind of break the bonds of Earth that you find so fascinating as a photographer?
I like the idea. I mean, if you think of the history of technology, advancements have allowed people to have experiences they would not have had prior to, right? So even the wheel, like the speed within which people could travel, it shifted, and then ships and aircraft and spacecraft allow people to have experiences that just as human beings we couldn't have otherwise. And I find it really fascinating that we've created these vessels that we can use to sort of provide us with those experiences.
The big emotional crux, I mean, there's several that run through this episode, but one of them is the literal journey, this odyssey to go to Bangladesh. And it's juxtaposed with this trip to Iceland. Like, what was it about these trips that I feel like they're some of the most personal work you've done in your entire career, your entire life?
Yeah, the Bangladesh one was a quarter of the country's workforce works in the ship repair industry, and the more I researched it, the more I realized it was really underrepresented photographically. And so I kind of went on this mission to experience that, and not knowing full well what I would accomplish, but the idea of just taking the journey for the sake of asking the question is so similar to even space exploration, right? It's just asking a big question and then taking the journey. So.
The other aspect of that is you're taking pictures of, there's something just about catching the essence of a ship worker, like holding a mast or holding a massive. But you also do it with the more intimate portraits, like with presidents or with, Keanu Reeves is one of my favorite, where it's just kind of shrouded in shadow. How do you find the essence of somebody as you're composing a portrait shot?
Well, we all sort of have the ability, not all, but most of us have the ability to express the entire range of human emotion. And there's a place that I like to sort of live with regards to that emotional content, and it's a kind of pensive, more reflective moment, and it's neither right nor wrong. It's just kind of where I like to live with my work, and so I usually just will like talk to people while I'm shooting. And obviously in Bangladesh, I just had to let it unfold. I had a fixer that I could communicate through. But, usually it's just through sort of communication that I can get people into that place.
When you're drawing something like, so you already have how much do you have in your mind's eye when you're composing a shot and like figuring out, how something is going to look? Like, how much do you kind of like to draw and sketch up before you actually, put it into frame?
Yeah, as far as storyboarding goes, I'll do loose boards, oftentimes because I need to share them with art department for sets and stuff like that. With rocket launches, I have to be very meticulous about it because I'll set multiple cameras and I don't want there to be like overlap of shots. So I'll draw out, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and then we'll kind of follow that storyboard while we're setting cameras. But, half the time I see it in my mind's eye, half the time I can sketch out like a starting place and then see where it goes.
One of my favorite moments is when you're sitting there in Iceland in this beached ship and it's just so remote. Like when you're doing an international shoot, like how is it finding the serenity and just these like beautiful landscapes with not a soul in sight?
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience, the Gardar. I was in Iceland for an HBO shoot. I did the key art for the new True Detective, and we went 4 days early to film for the documentary because I had researched shipwrecks in Iceland and I had found the Gardar. And I told the documentary crew, like, I found a ship in Iceland, I'm going to go check it out. And so they immediately were like, okay, we'll meet you in Reykjavik and we'll go together. And there was an exhilaration at the arrival, but then once we set in with it, and we stayed with it for a long time, and we shot night stuff of it, long exposure night stuff. I think some of that's in the documentary. Settling in with a ship that's 100, and I mean, it was launched the same year the Titanic was. So 1912, I think, is when it was launched. Yeah. Good stuff.
Of all the international locations you've done, like, what are some of the ones that really like stand out to you? Like, I've not to like toot my own horn, which I'm about to do, but like going to I've been in the Great Wall, and there's something about it, or like going to the Sahara where it's just like, oh, this is real, like that, having it tangibly there. Like, what are some of those experiences that you've had?
Well, the Sahara is one. You're right. That is very humbling. Yeah, you feel very small. India, I did shoot in India that I really, really enjoyed, way in the country. And, people ask me sometimes, of all the places I've been, where would I like to revisit? And, I've been all over Europe many, many times, but India is one place I'd like to go back to. But the Bangladesh, it's a surreal environment. And, when you drop yourself into an environment like that, it is a little bit like time traveling. And that's one element I like about it. It's a very, very foreign environment, and you quickly need to find your bearings and sort of start to assess how you're going to interpret it visually.
The trip to Dhaka felt like a full circle moment for you in a lot of ways. Like you were saying, at this stage in your career, what do you really what gets you out of bed and, strapping on the camera in the morning?
I think a lot of it has to do with, once again, like legacy stuff. So in the last several years, I've been really hyper-focused on my archive. There's millions of images in it. And the idea of sort of distilling it, I've done 6 books, and we have 6 more in the works. So the idea of like getting that stuff solidified and getting it in book form, so it can be sort of analyzed and digested, is important for me. It's not doing any good if it's sitting in boxes. So the idea of like, setting it in stone, I think, has been a focus for me.
For all the amateur photographers out there, what are some of the secret sauces in composing a great shot in terms of like lighting and staging and that sort of thing?
It's one frame at a time. I think the best sort of approach for someone starting out or someone trying to improve their work is to really analyze the shots that they're doing and be critical of the shots you're doing and see what you can do to improve upon them. Reflecting on contact sheets when I was shooting film back in the day was invaluable to me. It's just looking at it and accepting the fact that we miss it a lot of the time. And what could I have done better? What could I have changed? How could I have changed it? But it takes conscious reflection to do it. I don't think like applying a filter or, a contrast setting, a preset or whatever. That's not a good photograph, right? A good photograph is a culmination of a moment, the way the light works, the composition, all those things. But yeah, I don't know that there's really any secret sauce other than to be aware of what you're doing, and progressively, your work will improve.
How have you seen the industry change now that we all literally have a HD camera in our pockets at all times?
I think with regards to that, so there was a technical barrier in photography that kept people out for many, many years, right? It was like you needed to understand like optics and sensitometry, and there were a number of things that you had to understand prior to sort of like embarking on a photographic career. Whereas now, what you get with a DSLR or mirrorless camera or your movie studio that you have in your back pocket, which is a remarkable and wondrous machine, don't get me wrong, it's still image making. So what you get is you get something that's properly exposed, and you get something that's probably sharp in focus, right? That's all you get. The rest of it is image making. So I don't find it threatening. I find it incredibly democratized. And there's a quote from Bertolt Brecht in the 20s. He said, film will only be a true art form when it's as accessible as pencil and paper, which I always loved. And I feel like we're there. The pencil and paper's in your back pocket, so go. But image making is image making. Making a compelling image that moves people has nothing to do with the technique. It has everything to do with like the approach and the sensibility of the author.
just one more question to tie it up, Dan. And, like you're saying, legacy is kind of something we keep coming back to. And with this documentary, you get to see how your career has impacted your life and how it interweaves and connects with your life. How is it looking at those millions of images, those 6 books and counting, the things that you've captured over the course of your life?
I have right now, I'm working on one book, and I have over 500 images laid out at the studio, and walking through them and looking at them. I mean, there's a definite sense of pride in the fact that, I've tried to be consistent with my work and tried, I realize that on some days I'm hired as an artist, and on some days I'm hired as a craftsman. And I like the idea that I can walk the line between the two and meld them together consistently. Looking at all the work is sort of humbling to a degree. A lot of gratitude. I feel a lot of gratitude for the people that have entrusted me with their money over the years to fund the work. So it's a very satisfying endeavor to sort of put all this stuff together.
Is there a difference, I guess, as a quickie, between putting on the hat as a craftsman and putting on the hat as an artist, mentally, that you kind of turn on and off?
Yeah, I think it's the way we frame it, and I think it's also just being honest with ourselves about what we're trying to accomplish on that day. It's so fluid for me now, I don't really think about it. I think going into it, I understand what my job is. It's not difficult at all for me to, it's like I need to accomplish this today. Yeah, I kind of navigate it pretty fluidly, yeah.
Well, again, Photographer with Dan Winters premieres on Nat Geo on March 18th and on Hulu and Disney Plus on March 19th. Dan, thanks for taking the time to sit down with me today.
I appreciate it. I'm going to go back to bed.